I am Seth Fisher, and before we forget, I'm going to thank our sponsors. We are brought to you by Underground Printing in the Bose Store. You should check out Underground Printing for custom holiday swag for your business at ugp.io/holiday gift guide. And we'll have a special code you can use. What is it, Gobble27? GOBBLE 27. Anyway, like a turkey. It's not Jobble or Dobble. It's the names are, yeah. Giobati has kind of messed up all my consonants this week. Ah. So hockey. I mean, we could talk about the Indiana game, but is. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of coaches that I interact with who, they focus on playing the ball, and like their coaching points are they're mad because the Michigan receivers go up too early. Like, you remember when you're playing NCAA and you press the triangle button too early when you're trying to defend and it just goes over your head. Like the cornerbacks are like they're going up too early. But that is, like you said, worlds better than what we had before when they were 2 yards away from the guy and couldn't even make a play on the ball. I think there was only one that I saw where Gray was beat that bad. Yeah, there is not. I want to say there has not been a single penalty called on Michigan defensive backs this year that I've disagreed with, other than I think the Dax Hill one in the first game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. On the Hawkins one. The Big Ten does let people get away with that crap, but I mean they're obviously not letting you get away with that crap, and it is holding, and it's gonna get called if you're doing that and you had a reputation. It's gonna get called. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Well, and I mean, they run they have a doubles coverage that they've been running ever since Don Brown got here, and for the linebackers, there's nothing different between that and cover two. So I mean, coverage busts for the linebackers, it's like that was more frustrating to me than I mean, like the low stuff and like switching zones and stuff like that. But like their coverage rules should not be dramatically different than on the inside. Like the hitch thing you're talking about is what a linebacker does often on cover one too. I'm So, I mean, the question is, what do you do from here? They're not going to unearth another cornerback that can play man, right? If they had one, they would be playing him, unless like Andre Seldon has just been unavailable or some for some reason, right? And he gets or DJ Turner has been hurt. Like we haven't seen those guys, but most likely they're not unearthing somebody who can play man coverage. The receivers only get better from here, so you have to get better at zone. There's nowhere else to go. Hmm. Hmm. Doctor Blitz. Hmm. Hmm. And It's not going to get easier. I want to make 2 points on the stuff that you were calling man on the mesh because I went into like all the mesh plays for next sharpers this week, and what Michigan was doing, except for maybe one instance where they ran their regular cover one, they're running that doubles coverage. And doubles is really simple. It's just the safeties are doubling up somebody. Like they pick their guys, their two most worrisome guys, and double cover them. So Vincent Gray always had a safety bracketing whoever he was covering. And that just baited the single coverage, right? So you end up with single coverage with Michael Barrett. And one time Michael Barrett got tested on a wheel and actually kind of came up and then got lost. But he was fine otherwise. And Dax Hill was the other guy that they left in man coverage, in pure man. And I think you're right that they baited it, but it was with that doubles coverage. Um, I mean, that's something you can only run on passing downs. It's not going to be something that's going to be part of your base defense. Can't hear you? That is terrible. Okay. Let me see if I can fix that real quick in the middle of in the middle of our podcast.
No, that's wrong. L
All
for
right.
loss.
I think that they can hear you now. I'm sorry that we might have had an issue with that. Talk real quick.
I'm talking really quick, so if you can hear me now, um,
Yeah, you're on the
say
stream.
something. No, don't.
You're on the stream.
Great.
If they can't hear you now, I don't know.
Well, if you missed that, then you can either get it on the podcast, but that would be a discussion of Michigan's defense in a 3-4 loss to
You
Indiana.
missed our
So you might let it slide. On the other
maybe
side
we'll
of the
just skip
ball,
that
the
whole point.
offense, like
Hmm.
the news is not that different on offense. So you have a couple of promising performances. I thought Joe Milton did well for the most part. He had two big mistakes, of course, but he was being put in situations where he's dropping back. Everybody knows it's going to be a pass, and he needs to make something happen. Pocket presence really stood out. Like his ability to drift back in the pocket to get to make time for himself is exceptional, and he has the arm to make that happen. He's able to step up in the pocket when there's a pocket that is available, and he's able to power through contact, throw kind of off platform, throw without stepping into passes, and he still gets it out mostly accurately. Um, and that's just something that I haven't seen in a Michigan quarterback in a long time. So I thought that was really encouraging. Obviously, the interception where he throws it way, way off where it needs to be is a problem. Obviously, missing Bell is a problem. He had a couple of instances where he read stuff late, but he's a redshirt sophomore in his third start. If he wasn't reading stuff late, he'd be a mutant. So he's already a mutant. He's just not that kind of mutant.
Yeah, like Graham
I thought
Mertz.
he, yeah, I thought he had a really encouraging game. But Graham Mertz, when he comes in against Illinois, he isn't facing 3rd and 9 all the time, right?
Right,
So
right.
he has 21 attempts in his first start. They're running the ball the whole time. When they run play action, it's actually meaningful play action instead of Michigan's play action. So the amount that was put on Mertz's plate versus the amount that was put on Milton's plate is not comparable. And
Yeah.
that's because Michigan, for the second straight game, had no ground game.
Yeah. This is of all the frustrating things. Like I can deal with the fact I know that they got into the season with man coverage and then realized they couldn't play it, and so they had to play zone. Um, and people who missed that part of the podcast because I wasn't recorded it, uh, that was like what we talked about. It like okay, you can't play man, so you have to play zone, and you're gonna be bad at it when you start, but it's the only way to go. The really frustrating thing is the offense because I saw exactly what Indiana does. Everyone who ever plays Indiana sees that they blitz cornerbacks all the time. They love blitzing off the edge. They call it America or double America. They have a great name for that specific blitz. And you're not prepared to run anything against it. Like they think they ran one screen? They did like
And
one
even
RPO.
that screen was long yardage, and they got a 3-man rush against it. You
Hmm.
you never saw them even look at trying to exploit the cornerback. Like if you actually are running RPOs, you're able to look at someone post snap and then make a decision. So it's fairly easy to look at the cornerback, see if he's coming, and then make a decision based on that. And they just, for whatever reason, have never done that. So Joe Milton had a couple of reads, I think, in the first game, and those went okay. And now they're not running him. They're not allowing him to read anything post snap in the ground, on the ground, or in the air. And you have mostly new offensive line when that was down 2 starters, and you're not helping them out with your play call. You're not helping them out with optioning off a guy with your quarterback. You're not using that as a threat, and it just I fail to understand how we could be here in 2020 and this is still the issue. So
That was, I mean, we got an offensive coordinator whose hashtag is speed and space. We have all these little guys who are great in space, and you're playing a team that's giving you a lot of space, right? If they're blitzing off the edges, they're taking away manpower from the place where you can attack with that kind of offense. They're begging us to run our own offense, and we're not running it. And once we're there, I don't get it. I don't get how you can, how that's in your game plan. I don't get why we're not utilizing the things that we're built to do.
no, and especially after it worked so well in the first game.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first play in the first game was a little flare screen to Corum that went for 20 yards. They were running Joe Milton for big chunks at a time, and they had a beautiful RPS +3 play to Eric All that all would have dropped, but otherwise was going to be an easy 25-yard touchdown. So they put it out there in game 1, and they score 49 points, not against a good team, but okay. And then they just stop entirely. I have no earthly idea why anything that happened in the Minnesota game would convince Michigan that they don't need to run their quarterback and that they don't need to attack the edges. It just,
it makes so little sense that guessing is, guessing at it just leads into conspiracy theories, and I mean there's nothing I can offer, right? There's no analysis that I can show you like, hey, when this guy blitzes, this should be your alert. But that's not like necessarily a quarterback read. That should be in the offense ahead of time. That should be like what you're game planning to do, because that's what Indiana does.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell you what the game plan was for this game because they never ran the ball. They ended up just with a ton of drop back passing for Joe Milton, and that was it. There was nothing that really played off anything else. There was nothing that, even in the Michigan State game, they had that play where they faked the pin and pull and flipped it to Mason. And I was like, oh, nice. That's a nice play. Mm-hmm. There was none of that in this game. There wasn't even like a wrinkle that you're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. Good job.
Yeah.
So,
or anything based off of what the things that they've done in the past. Like, Ben Mason wasn't even out there, so they're not even running anything that, uses Ben Mason as the threat of Ben Mason, which got you yards in the Minnesota game. I thought that was one of the understated part of his role in the Minnesota game, was they were freaking out about him, and that got you space in other places, too. Now, if you're going to have him on the field,
clear from his deployment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's clear from his deployment in this game that they had a major issue with Mason in the Michigan State game. But then that just kind of goes back to, okay, this is your senior fullback. Mm-hmm. You moved him to defensive tackle last year, even though he had zero shot at being a defensive tackle. He doesn't really know what he's doing. So if one guy doesn't know what he's doing, well, that's one guy. If the defensive line can't stay onside, if the linebackers can't play cover 2, if the fullback can't identify his block, if the offensive line can't fit a simple power play, that is 4 or 5 different failure points on one team, and that goes back to the head coach. And if we're in year 6 right now, and this is what it looks like, and this is what it's going to be, I mean, I just don't see a way forward.
It's a COVID year. It's there's so many things going wrong. They're out. I think in my last count, 5 of the top 5 players, depending on if Quiddy can play this week, right? Like this team,
he's out.
So he's out. Yeah. So I mean, what do they got? I mean, they've got young guys, And I'm mostly interested in what they're going to do. Like, how did Taylor Upshaw look, right? How is Julius Welshoff going to look next year? Who's going to be the receivers? How's the offensive line coming together? Like, I think that's where I'm at right now. It's just I want to know what they're going to look like in 2021. Forget the coach, the players on the field, and I want to know what those guys, are going to look like next year. That's really kind of like the only interest I have left in the season. And maybe beat Ohio State, but not going to happen.
Well, that sounds like a break point. I think this is a segment that has reached its end.
All right, let's break and talk about nicer years.
All right.
It's November, and that means the holiday season is right around the corner. If you're looking for a unique gift, our friend of the pod, Underground Printing, is here for you. We love UGP because they provide top-quality custom tees and hoodies at affordable prices. Plus, their expert staff makes the design process simple. Check out UGP's holiday gift guide at ugp.io/holiday gift guide and use the promo code GOBBLE27 for 27% off your next purchase. That's GOBBLE27, like a turkey.
Let me just tell you a couple things to keep in your mind while you're out there. When we take the field, we're going to win. We've got big goals. We've got big ideas. We've got to win this game, and there is no game on the remainder of our schedule more important than the one you're going down to the tunnel to play today. Now let's go. Let's go.
Underground Printing is proud to present the Bow Store. Visit us at our new location at 333 South Main or online at www.bow.team.
Win or lose this season, stop into Information Entropy and make sure that you have a good time on game day. First-time customers can light up a free pre-roll and enjoy the quality cannabis products that this shop has to offer. Located 2 miles away from the big house and accessible to ages 21 plus, find Information Entropy at 1115 Broadway, across from the Kellogg Eye Center off Plymouth Road. They don't want to hear the words go green over there, but they are happy to help you smoke it. Check them out at Information Entropy.
If you get in foul trouble in Ann Arbor or Metro Detroit, you want a Michigan man on your bench. Call former prosecutor and now criminal defense attorney Jonathan Paul, the Michigan Law Grad, at 248-924-9458 or visit his website at michiganlawgrad.com.
Families gather around our tree, and the preacher says a prayer, and the hole they've dug is as black as a dress I've worn today.
Should be back.
I thought you were going to drive the segment.
I can drive the segment. I figured you just
Sorry.
say hello all the time. I never feel like the guy who's supposed to do that. But I can take over.
Yeah,
that's all right.
That's fine.
We are.
I'll do it. Welcome back to MGoRadio's live from social distancing. We have a special guest,
Fritz Seyferth. Yeah.
Seyferth. Sorry about that. I've been trying to pronounce Giabate all week. It's been difficult. But Seth is going to drive this segment.
Yes, I am. Well, Fritz, I'm really glad to have you on here. Fritz Seyferth, for anyone who's familiar with the great Touchdown Billy Taylor call, the man who actually blocked while Touchdown Billy Taylor just walked in Touchdown Billy Taylor's touchdown is Fritz Seyferth here, who got the edge on that play. And on the play before that, actually got the first down when it was 4th and 1, right?
You got it. Yeah, well, it's great to be with you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a real honor. I think we did one segment before on Billy Taylor's touchdown when we did it for when we had that article with Sapp. But I don't think we've gotten you on here before. But you're an Ann Arbor legend. Everyone around town seems to know you.
Well, when you've been around as long as I have, that can happen.
So you played for Bo. What year did you come? Were you 1969 freshman? 1970? What year were you?
1968 freshman under Bump Elliott.
Ah, so Bump recruited you, and then all of a sudden you got a brand new coach.
Yeah, we got a brand new coach, and the interesting thing about that freshman class that Bump left Bo, there were 14 of us drafted in the NFL from that freshman class. So Bo was always appreciative of the class he inherited.
Yeah, that's that's always nice to walk into something like that. And man, I think that people don't even remember that or don't understand that like Bump had a pretty good team in '68, and B had a bonkers recruiting class right beforehand. So he did not leave Bo a program that was in shambles. He left Bo a pretty strong program that was getting ready to compete.
Yeah, Bo was so appreciative.
Yeah. What did you guys think when all of a sudden they have this irascible guy from Miami instead of the program you signed up for?
So you have to understand, Bump Elliott was one of the truest gentlemen you'd ever want to meet. I mean, he probably never swore, never he never raised his voice. He was very much a gentleman. And when Bo came in, I'll never forget, Guy Murdoch was playing center. He was a sophomore, wound up starting as a sophomore. Just been moved to center, and I was playing fullback, and I was lined up at fullback, and Guy missnapped the ball. And let me preface this by saying that we're coming off of just a year earlier, we were being recruited by all these wonderful head coaches in our homes, telling us how wonderful we were and what wonderful gentlemen they were, and how they're going to look after us. And I just thought head football coaches were some of the greatest human beings you could ever meet, and they're just exemplary human beings and people. And Guy missed the snap and missed the snap, and the quarterback fumbled the ball, and I didn't even get out of my stance. I was still standing there, and Bo came running over, and he kicked Guy right in the rear end with his foot and just kicked him. And I'm going, what was that?
Welcome, freshman. This is how it is.
I can't believe this. Anyway, it was tough, but he also but we, and I want to say, I don't want to send the wrong message on Bo. The reason we all love him is because he loved us, and we knew he loved us, and that was so important. The guy had such a deep, caring heart that it was you'd do anything for him because he was there for you. He didn't care whether you liked him or not. He wasn't there to be liked. He was there to get all he possibly could to get out of you and help you become the man you were supposed to become.
And he did get a lot out of you. You worked for him for a while, didn't you?
Well, 7 years after graduating, I was in New York City, and a number of incidences happened where I began to realize I was traveling Monday through Friday for working in New York City, traveling the country, and I had no life. And we had an event happen with one of our children that made me realize I got to stop this nonsense. And I decided to make a job change. And Bo heard I was going to change the job, and he said, "Fritz, I want you to come back to Michigan. Football is becoming a business. You run the business. I want to whistle around my neck." And my wife was born and raised in Ann Arbor, and so it was not hard to talk her to leaving Connecticut and coming back to Michigan. And we've been here 41 years now.
And you were handling recruiting too? Is that true?
Yep. Recruiting, spring clinics, summer camps, academics, travel, everything that didn't have anything to do with coaching was mine. And the recruiting was a real reward and a wonderful experience.
So I'm guessing recruiting in the early 1980s was pretty much the same as it is today, right?
Well, let me tell you, when I traveled with a large C trunk with 16 millimeter camera, VHS camera, recorder. I mean, it was a pain in the neck to travel around the country trying to evaluate film and see what. You had to carry an 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter VCR carrier. It was nuts. And now they just pull it down from the cloud and take a look at it.
Right. How did you guys even identify who you're looking at? Like, how did you know? You just stuck around the Midwest, or?
We sent 5,000 cards to high schools across the country and asked them to recommend the kids on their team they thought could play for Michigan. Okay. And then we'd ask them who in their conference did they play that thought had a potential to play at Michigan. And then it was a matter of assembling all these cards, and they came and making sense out of it, and then putting it together so the coaches, when they hit the road in May, you'd have a list for them to take a look at based upon the feedback we got. And that's all there was at that time. There were a couple of guys getting into the recruiting business that you could buy some lists from, but this is the old-fashioned way of doing it. This is through paper and pen and collecting data.
So you have any good stories from the road, or stories from some specific Michigan recruits that you're allowed to share? I don't want you to have to.
Well, the stories are just too numerous. But I'll share a story on Ward Manuel, and I like telling the story. As we go to the airport and pick players up, Ward Manuel was the first player that I ever picked up at the airport that got off the plane with 3 textbooks in his hand and ready to study. And so he was a serious student. So I give Ward credit for that. Yeah, I guess a fun story that I'd love to tell is that Tom Monahan used to come down to the office and see how we were doing recruiting. He cared deeply about how we were doing recruiting wise. And so we'd have on the board the 25 players, 30 players we were going to sign, and we'd have were they signed or not. They're checked, who's the coach that went out with the tender offer, and did they get it signed? Do we have it back in the office? Mm-hmm. And we had a terrible snowstorm one Wednesday. I forget what year it was, but in the late 80s. And Tom came in the office and saw that we had 2 guys that we hadn't signed. And we said, we can't sign them. The roads are closed it was Mike Gillette was one in Battle Creek. And I'm trying to think of the other one was in Ohio. I should know who that was. Oh, I mean, it might have been Chris Zerbrug in Ohio. Okay. And Tom says, I have a helicopter. I will have the helicopter here in an hour. And sure as hell, he picked up Jerry Hanlon, and Jerry Hanlon went down and signed Chris Zerbrug, and then the helicopter came back, picked me up, and I went out and I signed Mike Gillette. And it was one of those crazy times in recruiting, but fun times.
Yeah, and then when I was writing the story about Bo, kind of looking at Texas A&M, I came across a note that there was a recruiting class up to visit Michigan, and Bo was nowhere to be found.
So I'm getting calls. So I know Bo's down there, and I do not know that Gil Brandt has stolen him away to get him to go to Texas A&M and talked him into taking the visit. And so Bo calls me back because we were expecting him for dinner, I think, on Saturday night.
This is like 1981, right? Like January 1981?
Yeah, it was 82.
82. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
And he calls me up and says, Fritz, I won't be back. I think he was going to be back for Sunday to say goodbye to all the kids and have his final interviews with all the kids. We had it all set up. He said, I won't be back. I said, what do you mean you won't be back? We have 14 recruits here. They're all waiting to see you. And I think Jim Harbaugh might have been one of them.
Yeah, he would have been in that class.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, this is nuts. How can you not come back? And he says, I've got something very important that I'm tied up in and I can't get back. And I'm going, I don't know what we're going to do. But actually, we got a couple kids out of that class. I can't remember exactly who they were, but it didn't go as bad as I thought it would. It turned out okay. But I have to say, the nervous time of telling all these kids on Sunday morning that they weren't going to meet Bo was very awkward.
I imagine. Yeah, that class would have been like Harbaugh, Querna. I'm trying to think who else was in that class.
Well, it was a great group of kids. We loved that class. I should look that group up. But that actually is one of the things that got me into the development business, because they were offering Bo a $3 million agreement if he would stay for 10 years. And the guys from Michigan came to me and says, Fritz, we got to raise $1 million right now and give it to Bo to keep him here. And that's when Tom Monahan gave him the franchise down in Columbus, Ohio for Domino's Pizza.
Right, on a paper napkin. was the story. Yeah, he got in the car. It was after Bo decided he was going to stay, and then Monahan's like, here, take this.
The paper napkin came a little bit later in a contract that was not so good.
Yeah. I had a story from somebody in Columbus who worked at that place, and said that Bo
Yeah.
Schembechler shows up one day, and he's got like Gil Brandt with him, and he's got like some other so and so's with him. Right? He wanted to show everybody his pizza place, and he's like grilling this poor kid sitting behind the counter who has no idea Bo Schembechler owns the pizza store he works at in Columbus, Ohio, the week that they're playing Michigan.
So we would take the bus. The team would wind up going by Bo's Pizza Place on the way from the hotel to the stadium. So we would take the bus. The team would wind up going by Bo's Pizza Place on the way from the hotel to the stadium, and on the windows they would have painted "No dough for Bo."
So speaking of dough, we were going to have our next Ann Arbor Institutions shirt out today, which is going to be the Pretzel Bell, which my mom worked at back in the 70s, and she's got a lot of crazy stories, not many of them that are appropriate for radio, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, you helped bring the bell back, or create the new Pretzel Bell, I should say. How'd that happen?
Well, I have to say that the Pretzel Bell was a place that we did recruiting dinners on Friday night. And the recruits would come in, we'd take over the captain's room in the Pretzel Bell, and it was it was so distinguished in the way it presented itself, and it was the place to go. It was the first place I met Tom Harmon. He and I just happened to be walking in the door together at the same time into the Pretzel Bell, and that's how I met him for the first time. And so it's where the right people hung out. And so what happened was after it closed, there's a wonderful gentleman in New York City by the name of Bruce Zinkel that thought we needed a 4-star hotel in Ann Arbor, and said, "Fritz, would you help me put that together?" So we did, and we'd won the rights to do it. Then we were going to build it in Ann Arbor, and he said, "What do you think? What kind of restaurant should we have in it?" And I said, "Wouldn't it be great to pick up something like the Pretzel Bell?" And in the research, did some research and found out actually the Pretzel Bell was available to be used as the name of a restaurant. We were going to recreate the Pretzel Bell there, but that fell apart with change in city council, which is a whole nother story.
Oh, Brian's.
So we
you just activated my co-host, sir.
I am deeply sorry for that 2-year period. I'm glad it just ended.
Do not activate me.
All right, we're going to keep the swearing off this podcast, so we're going to move on.
We need some people to think about the future. Anyway, that went away, and so we've held on to the name for 6, 7, 8 years, and finally, these wonderful guys at Two Mission were looking for a sports-themed restaurant to put together, and we knew the people, and they said, "Well, let's do the Pretzel Bell," and that's what brought it back. And into modern times, to do it a little more different than it exactly was, but the same theme, that this is the place where the community and the university come together to celebrate the greatness of what the university has represented in the past, and we really like to have it represent all parts of the university, not just athletics. From engineering to music, to theater to dance. Let's celebrate the greatness of this university at the Pretzel Bell.
I mean, I remember going in the first time, I'm like, this is exactly how you need to do this. Because, like, I read about Michigan history, so I knew about the Pretzel Bell. And my mom had, like, those were her stories. She didn't remember the football team at all. No offense. She didn't remember you guys at all, but that wasn't her thing. But she remembered, like, the Pretzel Bell in detail, and, like, the ribs and everything, and how they made the clam chowder. She still makes Pretzel Bell clam chowder for us all the time. But, like, but her recollections also were, like, it was not well run, and some of the other things about it were, they were known for not checking IDs and that sort of thing. And that's not really, and like the style of food and like the whole counter thing, like that whole kind of thing doesn't really work in a restaurant today. And then you guys like brought it back, but you have comfort food. I wish you could still stand on the tables. That's the only thing that I think you missed.
We bought tables that you could stand on if you had to, but it certainly is a liability. But the bar downstairs is just one. I think it's one of the great bars in Ann Arbor. It's just one of the great settings you can possibly be in, with that the big picture of Bo and all these great people around you, and this incredible looking bar, and then the the old stone walls that, you know, literally are under the sidewalks. It's just beautiful.
Oh, I mean, the detail is everywhere. Like you look up and like there's a basketball court on the ceiling, like literally like the
Yeah.
wood from a basketball court. I think someone was saying it was Chrysler Arena's old wood, but it's not. It's just a whole bunch of old Detroit.
Actually, it was the Olympia Arena. They had two gymnasiums. It was a side
Oh.
gymnasium for Olympia.
Oh wow. So it is kind of an important gymnasium up there. And then like all the stuff around there, you guys managed to like pull some of the old tables, and you can still scratch your name into the tables. I think I got to be one of the first people to scratch my name in there, and now I can't find where I did it. But
Yeah.
but like that was an old
That's-
tradition. Ringing the bell when you turned 21, that was a big thing there. And then the captain's room, like if you're walking by, I can't tell you how many times I walked by there, you know, because it's and I can see into the captain's room, and there's like a group of like maybe like the softball team or the basketball team, or just there's always somebody celebrating. Like they still do, like they celebrate the new captains there, or there's always like a group of old guys, of old football players or something. Like it's amazing that went away for so long, and like it's almost back in its entirety.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it is a fun, you know, it's a fun place. Like the basketball team will say that, you know, we got a recruit that's coming in late. Can you stay open a little bit later for us? And they'll stay open and take care of them, give them the captain's room, and they'll take it over. And
That's
so
not a
it's
violation.
not when they're on their pages. Not if they're on their. You know, I have to say it's one of the things that I used as a recruiting coordinator. You know, you have 48 hours to entertain kids on campus. You know, I don't think any professor's ever been entertained like we entertain recruits when they come on campus. It's like nuts. So Bo used to say that on the day after signing day, we'd get together as a staff, and he'd say, "Men, de-recruiting starts today." We got to bring these kids back down to earth because they have been told they are the greatest thing that has ever walked this earth, and we got to get their heads back, and so we can coach them. So it starts today, man. De-recruiting.
All right, so I mean, I want you to take me through a recruiting visit back then. I want to know what you did, because we never got recruited that way.
Well, there was a time when we could, and this is how crazy things were. There was a time when we would go down there and pick them up in Tom Monahan's helicopter at the airport, freight them, bring them to Ann Arbor, land it on the practice football field, greet them when they get out of the helicopter, give them a tour of the football facilities, and then take them down to the Pretzel Bell for dinner, and then send them off with their host for the evening. And then the morning we'd start with a breakfast at usually at the Campus Inn at that time, and which is the Graduate today. And we'd have breakfast with them together, and then we'd have them set up for academic appointments. And we would use the business school, the downstairs of the business school, and we'd have all the professors that were going to be interviewing the kids with us. We'd meet there in separate rooms. And so the people that were interested in business, the people interested in physical education, the people that are interested in science or biology or pre-med, they'd all meet with their academic people. And then we'd all come back together and have lunch together at the business school and get to know each other and chat. And it was a wonderful experience. We had got so many professors from the university invested in the program to help us recruit these young men and stay in touch with them and write them letters and call them up. It got to be wonderful. And then they'd go on tours of their facilities, their academic facilities, as well as the entire campus the rest of the afternoon. And then we'd let them free late in the afternoon to go around campus with their host. And then we'd host a big dinner, a celebration on that evening. And I'd have to say that in the early couple of years, it was a wonderful tradition to have Bob Ufer give a talk after lunch.
Oh.
And Bob Ufer would give a half-hour spiel that was like nothing you've ever heard before on the tradition of the greatness of what the University of Michigan represents and what it means to be a Michigan football player, a Michigan athlete representing the university, and the responsibility that comes with that. It was very special. As a matter of fact, I was with Bo in his office when Bob called, and Bob had gone to the Bahamas for some special treatments because the cancer was not. They didn't feel it was curable with what the medicines were in the United States. So he went off to try to get some new medicine, and it wasn't working. And you could tell that Bob was down. And he said he's going to be coming back pretty soon. And so I said, Bo, tell Bob we have one recruiting weekend left this coming Saturday. If there's any way he can get back in time, we'd love him to give a talk. Well, Bob was there. He showed up. He came back and gave that last talk, and that was then he passed away that fall. Yeah.
Wow.
And so this, this is off the topic, but while we're talking about Bob Buford, I was headed down to do some recruiting down in Akron, Ohio, Canton, Ohio, and I'm embarrassed. I'm dropping the gentleman's name. He played football at Michigan. Helped coordinate recruiting in Canton, Ohio. I pulled off the highway off I-70, and the news comes on that Bob Buford's passed away. And I thought, my goodness, it was just, you remember where you were when you heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go down and tell this gentleman who was in class at the same time as Bob that Bob had passed away. And he said, Fritz, in my hand is a birthday card. It's my birthday today from Bob Buford. He said, I haven't opened it yet. So small stories, but great community.
Mm-hmm. It's too bad we don't have a recording of that. I'd love to hear half hour Bob Buford telling me about the greatness of Michigan history.
I had the good fortune of listening to the Wistert brothers when they were inducted into the Hall of Honor. Mm-hmm. And Gerald Ford, when he was inducted to the Michigan Hall of Honor, the Michigan Athletic Hall of Honor. We have no recordings of anything they said. It was at the time, my wife was sitting next to me and I was recruiting coordinator, and she said, you need to record this for recruits to hear this. Recruits need to hear what these men are saying. It was powerful, but we didn't have that technology at that time to do it. Or we didn't have the smarts to do it, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I give you a hard time about it, but I didn't record about 10 minutes of this podcast today, so some of that problem's still going around.
That's not a big deal.
That's not a big. It was just the part about our defense this year. I don't think anyone's going to miss it too bad.
Oh boy. Well, there's always hope, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, do you think they got to bring the fullback back? Was that what was missing this week?
Well, it certainly worked in our offense, and I was delighted to be a part of it. And it was great to see it come back a couple of years ago. It was fun to see the difference that the fullback could make.
Yeah.
I think it keeps people honest in the middle anyway.
Yeah. Well, you were a great one, and I'll put a link into the play so those who didn't get to hear the block heard around the world will get a chance to experience it again, because I think touchdown Billy Taylor it was a great call by Ufer, but doesn't quite explain what happened on the field at that moment, and it's one of the great moments in history, and I'm really glad you came on here to talk about everything, and we really wrung the most out of you we can.
Thank you. It's an honor to be part of your program and to be part of Michigan football, Michigan athletics, and the Michigan community.
Absolutely. Well, we're still around. We're still going to tell these stories, and we got some more stories coming up because we got basketball recruiting on docket after the next break. So, Fritz, thank you very much, and we'll talk again, I think.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Take care, Brian. All the best. Gabriel, man.
All right.
This is Matt Demrest, the owner of Homeshore Lending. We're a local mortgage company here to help you purchase with confidence and refinance with ease. People don't get mortgages very often, so it can be confusing. We'll break down every single line item so that it all makes sense. And at the end of the day, if we're not giving you the best deal, we'll tell you to go with the other company. We're here to offer our simple mortgage guidance.
This is Seth Fisher from MGoBlog. Over the years, we've sent dozens of readers to use Homeshore Lending, and every review that's come back has been raving. I myself used them to refinance after doing our original loan through our bank. I was amazed how much smoother the process was for our company complicated loan. Brian used them, you should use them too.
Finding out whether it makes sense or not to refinance or getting pre-approved to buy a new home is easy. Head over to homesurelending.com. That's HOMESURE lending.com/MGoBlog to find out more. Or call us at 734-531-9950. That's 734-531-9950. I've got two of my favorite people here with me. Kind of an annual tradition. Cooper and Colby. Cooper, how old are you?
11.
Colby, how about you?
9.
Can I get a Go Blue?
Go Blue!
NMLS number 1161358, Equal Housing Lender.
Let me just tell you a couple things to keep in your mind while you're out there. When we take the field, we're going to win. We've got big goals. We've got big ideas. We've got to win this game, and there is no game on the remainder of our schedule more important than the one you're going down to the tunnel to play today. Now let's go. Let's go.
Underground Printing is proud to present the Bow Store. Visit us at our new location at 333 South Main or online at www.bow.team.
This is a special message from our friends at the Residence Inn, Ann Arbor Downtown. All of our best to the MGoBlog family, and a special thanks to the medical community, healthcare workers, emergency personnel, and all essential workers that are keeping our world going. We miss you all. Hope everyone is staying safe, healthy, and home.
Get a holiday head start with Underground Printing. Whether it's a new custom swag for the staff or personalized face masks for the team, UGP can meet all of your custom apparel needs. They are locally owned and operated and have thousands of 5-star reviews. Check out UGP's holiday gift guide at ugp.io/holiday gift guide, because custom holiday gifts are a great way to stay connected. My wife loves to make fun of me because so many of my shirts are from UGP. They're not all Michigan. I've had them custom make some. They've been supporting MGoBlog for so long that they've had time to replace my entire wardrobe. Seriously, check them out for this holiday. ugp.io/holiday gift guide.
Ship has found her, taken down by waves of crimson and green. Oh, so gravely death she claims me, lovingly embraced. I have lifetime trying to make life into all those times I have known. I see my friends, they grow wider than tall, and I know that the same happens to me. And that's the waves lick the beach, I can feel.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 6.6.
Three.
Live from social distancing. We're welcoming Matt D of Endless Motor right now to talk some basketball recruiting. How you doing, Matt?
Good. How about yourself? Another great way to sort of kickstart the weekend with the commitment of Musa. Am I saying this correctly? Giabate? I know there's been some confusion in terms of the pronunciation there.
I believe that's correct. That's what Sam was saying, and I kind of implicitly trust Sam when it comes to this kind of thing. So Musa Giabate, the number 25 guy in the composite, although you think he's the top 10 player in America.
Yeah, whatever the phonetics may be on the last name, certainly love the game. For me, he's definitely a top 10 level prospect. No question, a legitimate professional aspirations there in terms of being an NBA caliber athlete with the translatable skill sets on both ends of the court. I'm going to give you guys a blast from the past. You guys may or may not remember this name, but physically, in terms of the physical profile and the same sort of defensive skill set, and then later on in his career, the ability to stretch the floor from distance, Jawan Johnson from Purdue. There is a guy that he sort of reminds me of. I want to say, what was that, about 10 years ago, if you guys recall?
Yeah.
And I think the recently the name that you would probably think of would be maybe Orturu from Minnesota, but he's a bit more physically developed, more of a guy with more girth. So there's maybe a bit of a distinction there. But I have to tell you, in terms of roster composition, to complement Hunter Dickinson's offensive prowess and skill in terms of being a passer, Musa Giabate is everything you can want. A switchable defender. I mean, to be candid, I think he could defend a three. He's that agile on the perimeter. Like, he could defend three different positions. He's a guy with, and I know that Brian, you and I, we sort of discussed this a bit, but I forget who it was. I believe it was Jerry Meyer from 247 that says he wasn't necessarily a guy that could stretch the floor. Well, let me tell you, he can. The shot looks really smooth. The arc is good. The rotation is good. He looks really comfortable as a pick and pop guy. And yeah, he's got some face-up abilities. His first step for a guy that size is absolutely elite. He's a one-and-done guy at Michigan. That there's absolutely no question in my mind. The NBA will draft him on potential, but I do think in his 1 year at Michigan, even if he averages, let's say, just 10 or 11 points, he's going to have a huge impact on the defensive end. He's going to unlock a lot of things in terms of what we want to do, in terms of we want to go small. With him, you're not really going that small at 6'10" and still maintaining that agility. He's going to give you a help side rim protector. He's an elite rebounder. He's just going to have a lot of value for this team in 2021.
I mean, the Big Ten player who he kind of reminded me of after I watched a bunch of his stuff was Jaren Jackson.
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to throw that name out there, right? Because that guy's going to be an NBA All-Star. So
yeah,
I don't want
yeah. But, like, just in terms of, like, guys so long can play the 4, be a help side rim protector, can play the 5, just very, very switchable. You know, I think he in his season at Michigan State, he was shooting like 36, 38% from 3, something Giabate hasn't quite displayed yet, but we have indications that he might be on the way. So that's that. Like, I just remember when Michigan played Michigan State, the first time they had Jaren Jackson, he was just blocking shots from everywhere. It's like, how is anybody going to score on this team? And then Michigan won that game somehow. But
because Izzo took him off the court.
That's right. Yeah.
That was not the Syracuse game. But I mean, he's just a guy who you just look at him and he just oozes NBA. And to have that guy on your roster for even a year is going to be a major impact.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. He is in that same mold of a Jaren Jackson, right? Where there's just so many different things he could do versus a college big. Like, let's say hypothetically you put a Garza type big on him. He's just going to go right by him in a straight line. There's absolutely no question. He can finish over the top. He's agile enough to finish over you or around you. He can hit you with Euros. His post game is not what I would call advanced. It's not Garza-esque, but he can give you a jump hook over the left shoulder. You know, he can give you a baseline jumper, things of that nature, but you don't really need him to do that, right? He's a legitimate vertical threat in pick and roll and dump offs and things of that nature. So you're.
Oh, hey Matt, you just went quiet for a second.
Yeah, Matt, your audio dropped out there. The joys of Zoom.
Yeah. At least
I don't
this
think
time
he can
we
hear
hear
us
it.
either because he just keeps going. Yo, Matt.
Yeah, this is all really good stuff, I'm sure. Matt, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. All right. I mean, we could keep talking about. Wait, are you there?
There we go. There we go. Say something.
Can you hear us now, man?
Matt, can you hear us? This is going like full conference call right now.
Yep.
All right, Matt, why don't you drop and rejoin and see if that works? All right. Well, while we're waiting for Matt to reconnect, I just wanted to talk about the game last night that Frankie Collins had against CBC. They've got just a bunch of dudes, including Bronny James, televised on ESPN2. So there's highlights up if anybody wants to watch it. I love Frankie Collins. Like, the thing that kind of jumped out to me is he's extremely good at anticipating when he can go get a steal without taking an excessive risk. So there was one where he kind of figures out that a skip pass is coming because there's a trap in the corner, and he's able to recognize that. He has the athleticism to get up and grab it, and then he immediately throws an outlet pass to one of his teammates for a dunk. And there was an incident in the second half where he jumped a guy who was just turning up court in the back court, got a easy 2 out of that. And then when it came down to like crunch time in this game, he popped off a defender when he thought that the other guy was going to drive, and he's able to get a steal and then pass to a teammate for another transition opportunity. And that just speaks to his ability to think the game. And, he's a point guard, and he's a point guard who's a passer. So that's always going to be part of his game. But just to kind of see that ability to think ahead of the game on a high school level in a very chaotic game is, I think, unusual. And, I compared him to Xavier Simpson on Twitter, and a few people were like, "Oh, that's not good." I'm like, "No,
yeah. When you said that in our Slack chat, I think you said he's like 70% Xavier Simpson or something. But like, coming from you, we all understood that was a high compliment.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Am I back with you guys now?
Yes, you are. Great.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I was in Phoenix last night. Short trip, but I made the trip. I wanted to see Frankie one more time against the league competition and games. I think it's a very good comp, really, to be honest. And I think people took that as a slight, and I don't know why. You're talking about a guy that led the charge to a national championship team, an all Big Ten level performer. And but I think the difference with Frankie, right, is that his supporting cast, I mean, no offense to the previous rosters that we've had here, it's just going to be better from a talent standpoint. He's probably going to have more shooting to give him some space. And, but yeah, their way that they navigate the ball screens, the way that their vision, I mean, look, let's be candid. No offense to Frankie Collins' teammates over there at Coronado, but I mean, he should have finished last night with like 15 assists. I mean, some of these were absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they were point blank layups that, at the college level, these are easily assists. I mean, there had to be maybe 2 or 3, I want to say, just in crunch time in the last 3 minutes alone, where I was like, so it was kind of frustrating. I think he probably finished with 4 or 5 assists, but it could have very well been 15. Yeah,
he actually had 7, even despite the assists.
His spatial awareness, and for a guy that's probably a legit 5'11" or 6 foot, it's impeccable. Like, he can change direction on the drop of a dime. And I think the part that may get lost on people, they see the quick twitch explosion in terms of his leaping ability, but he's a really strong guy. Like, he bounces off people in the paint. He can absorb contact, and he gives out a lot of contact. I don't know if you guys recall this. There was at one possession late in the second half, and Arenado, that's what they're going by these days. They needed a bucket. There was maybe 3 minutes left. So they go to a horn set. They give the ball into one of their post players, and they have Collins duck into the post and get a bucket. I was just like, wow, okay, you need a go-to bucket, and you go to your 5'11" point guard, and he gives you that, right? And so it's just an impressive performance. I think he was relatively efficient. I want to say 7 or 15, 19 or 20 points, as Brian said, 7 assists. I think he was about 70% from the free throw line. But, yeah, just his command of the game, his ability to sort of dictate to the defense the terms at which his team is going to play. And on the defensive end, right, very active hands. He can bump you off of your spot. And I don't necessarily know if he's a guy that you want picking up full court all the time, because he can get kind of handsy. And when you're in the open court, you may get called for some fouls. But in the half court in particular, I love his activity. And as Brian mentioned, he's for a guy that small, you don't necessarily think of him being an off-ball guy that jumps passing lanes, but he does that like at a very high level, can come up with steals and deflections. Part of that because of his leaping ability. So, yeah, I think we spoke about this before. There's going to be a certain cap for a guy that's 5'11" and not a potent jump shooter, but he has the look of a top 50 level prospect. And again, I do think he's an instant impact rotation guy because physically he's ready.
Yeah, and I said he was 60% Xavier Simpson, and some of the things that separate him from Simpson are things that I think he's better at. So he's not going to have to develop a jump hook because he's more athletic. He can finish over guys at the rim, and his shot is not where you want it to be right now, but also it's ahead of where Xavier Simpson was even in college for a couple of years, because he's got a real jump shot. It's not a set shot.
Hey, here's the thing when we talk about finishing, right? I don't know if you guys notice or if the general public is noticing watching these games. Frankie is very adept at finishing with his offhand. Like, that's the first thing that pops out to me when I watch him. He can contort his body. He even finished through Chet with the left hand at one point, which is no small task, let me tell you. I mean, having watched him as much as I have, if you can finish over and through him in any way, but let alone your offhand. But, yeah, really, really high on Frankie, and especially in tandem with what the rest of the class is looking like.
Yeah, and just when it came down to winning time, like, he became a much bigger factor in what Arenado was doing. And there was a tough rebound at the end of the game, and he was able to sky and get it. And there was a point, I think, in the third quarter where he dives on the floor with Bronny James to, like, tie up a ball. And then afterwards, like neither of them letting go.
I was about 15 feet away from that. That was pretty entertaining, actually, because, while Bronny's only a sophomore, he's a kid that's well put together. Like, he's a strong kid. So, it was kind of good to see kind of a throwback old school mentality from both of those kids and say, hey, this is winning time. First man that hits the floor is going to get it. So, yeah, it's pretty fun to see. But, yeah, kind of closing remarks on Frankie. I think he's a slight stock booster, right? I think you'll see him slightly increase. I don't know what his composite is right now, but I venture to say he's going to hover around that top 50 threshold when all is said and done.
Is he sticking around for 4 years? Sorry, interrupt there.
I mean, he might be a 4-year guy. He might be a 3-year guy if he really hits. But I think he's a perfect recruit because he's in that range where he's a long-term college player, but he's going to be an impact player from day one, and he could be an all Big Ten point guard for a couple of years.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think he's a guy that's going to help you win a lot of games, right? And he's certainly, he brings entertainment value too, right? The guy is just electric in transition. I mean, he jumps off, his leaping ability just pops off the screen. So yeah, I'm excited about what he's bringing. The backcourt, he and Kobe Buffkin, we are going to have a really good backcourt for years to come, and it's pretty exciting.
So we didn't get to hear all of your Giabate takes.
So Giabate, correct me if I'm wrong, did we kind of have the technical difficulties when I was sort of speaking on him in terms of his defensive prowess? I don't really recall.
It was a little bit after that. We had already kind of talked about his switchability. We were
talking about... So I also wanted to sort of hit upon his rebounding ability, right? Because everybody associates defense with switchability, which absolutely it's tremendous, but he high points rebounds in traffic. Like, he's not afraid. His ball pursuit is very good. And I've witnessed him go up amongst trees because, look, IMG is not playing your typical public high school where they may start a center that's 6'5". Like, he's suiting up against guys that are 6'9", 6'10", and he's high pointing rebounds. So part of it is timing, part of it is ball pursuit, part of it's motor, and he brings all those attributes. And physically, I really want to reiterate this. I don't know that I said this on this hello post, but physically, he is the most gifted big we've had here in Ann Arbor in the last 15 or 20 years, just physically. I'm not saying he's the most skilled guy and he's going to average 30 points a game and all this sort of thing, but just physically, he can do things.
Oh, no. We lost you again. So, are you there? Can you hear us? Nope. Oh, we lost you again. Oh. Well. Anyway, I was gonna say, like, the physical ability of our centers in the last 15 years, like that's we've had good centers, but we haven't had NBA centers, I think, coming through here. I mean, well, sorry, you had
the only one I think was Ekpe Udoh of all people, who didn't last very long after Beeline arrived, but he was a tremendous shot blocker at Baylor and then made the NBA for a couple years. So it'll be a different paradigm for sure.
Yeah. We didn't
You're still not audible, Matt.
Yep.
All right. Well, now we're kind of looking towards 2022 with the class pretty much done in 21. They could probably take another player, but it might be a hard sell just in terms of minutes. So you're looking at Michigan going back to IMG, where they've got offers out to, I think, 4 players, including Jet Howard, of course, but Eric Daly, who's a bouncy 6'6", 6'7" power forward type who can really throw down some jams. Jaden Bradley, who's a point guard, who he's from North Carolina, and I think UNC is hot on his tail, but it's going to be an issue. But Michigan is pushing there, and they've got Howard in his ear developing a relationship. They've got Jet down there. Now they have Giabate. So there's a lot of connections there where Michigan might be able to continue plucking guys out of Florida. And of course, Juwan Howard knows everybody down in Florida because he was with the Heat for so long. So,
and that class doesn't have to be that big. Oh, we hear you. I think I hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so just wanted to clarify a bit there for what Brian said to tag along with Jaden Bradley. So here's somewhat good news. So I talk with Jaden Bradley pretty frequently, and he's actually originally from Rochester. So upstate New York, a little bit closer. And in my talks with him, right, when I ask him, like, right, who are the schools that are sort of pushing for you the hardest right now? Who's recruiting you the hardest? Literally, without being prompted, Michigan is the first school that comes out of his mouth, which is always a very good thing, right? And so, as Brian referenced, IMG teammate with Jet, and he is your prototype point guard that distributes first and scores second. Like, yeah, he's a guy that literally has the capability to average 7-8 assists at the college level, and he's got really good positional size. And I really think that I'm not necessarily going to say that we lead there because it's really early on, but I would definitely say we're in that functional top group without question.
And so, I mean, we'll see more about 2022 in the next couple months here, but I think the thing to emphasize is that this class is probably not going to be a one-off. You know, this is going to be kind of where Juwan Howard lives in recruiting. He's going to have a couple of guys in the 50 range. He's going to have a couple of program guys, and then he's going to probably be able to bring in one or two of these like high-end 5-star types annually.
Yeah, no, I think his recruiting chops at this point are probably beyond question. I mean, we have to keep in mind, right, that even for the 21 guys, he's working from behind. Like when you're talking about guys like Giamatti and Houston, like these guys are getting recruited literally from the 8th grade on. And for him to come in essence, just over the last 6 months to a year and be able to not only get these guys to commit, but have them sign their NLIs when they could have presumably gone anywhere in the country, that's pretty impressive. So that sort of, tells you something about his ability to relate not only to kids, to coaches, but their families, to sort of sell the situation in Michigan and his professional tenure, as both a player and a coach. And he knows what that process is like as a top flight recruit. I believe Juwan Howard was a top 10 prospect out of high school. So
yeah,
that sort of shared experience, I think, sort of resonates with kids. And, you can sell the ability to develop these prospects, particularly the bigs. He's done it at the highest level. So, yeah, I agree with Brian. I don't think we're talking about a one-off here. And if anything, I think that this may turn into a 2 or 3 year run, particularly with IMG. I mean, I know Jet said that he wants to be recruited and all this sort of thing, but it would be the biggest shocker in recruiting history if he ended up anywhere other than Michigan. So the question is, how many friends is he going to bring along? That's really the question.
Bring them all.
Yeah, bring them all. And if Eric Daly wants to come as a power forward, that's fine. If Jaden Bradley wants to be our point guard, even better yet.
All right. Well, this was the fun part of the podcast, but now we have to go talk about the Wisconsin game. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thanks a lot, you guys. Have a great weekend.
All right.
See you, man.
In southeastern Michigan, the yearly cost for a nursing home averages
$110,000.
It doesn't have to, though. Reed McCarthy founded Ann Arbor Elder Law after handling a tricky situation for his own family. Years of experience later, his boutique firm works with clients across southeast Michigan, dealing with Medicaid planning, long-term care, and tax, disability, and family law, not to mention family dynamics. If you have a family member who may need that level of care, or if you're ready to start your own estate plan, Reed can give you a plan for the future. Visit AnnArborElderLaw.com or call 734-945-9693. That's 734-945-9693.
Hey, so I have insurance and stuff, but I don't really know what's going on with it.
Yeah, your coverage probably sucks, and you're paying way too much for it. And I know this because I had a guy. His name's Phil Klein. He's actually a Michigan alum and wrestled for Michigan. He looked at my insurance and he's like, "Yeah, your coverage sucks, and you're paying a lot more than you need to for it."
I also I hesitate to even mention this, but I do have my insurance from a company that advertises during college football games. Well, and I wish that was not the case.
Well, why don't you just get it from a cool guy who actually reads MGoBlog?
Well, how would I do that? They have a website?
They have one of those too. It's philkleininsurance.com. Can you remember the name Phil Klein?
Sure.
Can you remember insurance?
Yes.
Okay. Use those two together, and you will save money on your insurance, and you will actually get better coverage on your home and your auto, and they do life too.
All right. So you're telling me if I Google Phil Klein Insurance, this website will come up?
Yes.
Wonders never cease.
Passion for e-commerce. Sell stuff online. Security. Performance. Conversion. Beautiful user experiences. Belle experience utilisateur. Monthly marketing. PPC SEO. Make your user a customer. Conversion. Eau de parfum for online retailers. Love your website. Let Human Element show you how. Available at human-element.com and fine department stores, not fine department stores.
Sir or madam, will you read my book? It took me years to write, will you take a look? Based on a novel by a man named Lear, and I need a job, so I wanna be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. It's the dirty story of a dirty man, and his clinging wife doesn't understand. His son is working for the Daily Mail. It's a steady job, but he wants to be a paperback writer. Paperback writer.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 6.3 live from social distancing. Now is the time on the show when we talk about the Wisconsin Badgers and the upcoming game. Although we could just say, I don't know, shruggy dot emoji and screw off, because Wisconsin has announced that more than 10 players are going to be out for this game. It could be up to 17. They had a total of 17 positive player tests. If any of them came after Graham Mertz's, those guys are definitely out. Mertz, I thought, was probably going to be out because I thought 21 days would stretch from Saturday to Saturday. But the way that the articles about this game have been written indicate that Mertz is at least hypothetically available. He may not have been full go in practice, but given what we saw from him in the opener and the fact that their backup is named Chase Wolf, which is an awesome name, but
hey, if he was a defensive end, it'd be great. Yeah.
Well, also Chase Wolf got COVID too, so he's been in the same protocol Mertz is. So their choices are really a Mertz who missed a bunch of practice time, or their fourth string quarterback Danny Vandenboom. So
who is, by the way, Mertz, 1 for 1 with a touchdown in his career in passing.
Totally rad. So I expect to see Mertz. I don't know what we're going to get from the rest of Wisconsin. And if Mertz was actually the cause of spread within the Wisconsin team, you'd think that the most likely guys to get infected would be running backs and the offensive line, especially because Wisconsin huddles. So he's just breathing on all these guys when he's doing the play calls. Another reason to never huddle, Seth.
They said 17 guys 2 weeks ago, right? Like, that's how long ago that they said 17 guys. So I don't know how well they caught it on the Saturday. It was a Friday night game, right? So then they caught it that Saturday. He took a test on Saturday morning.
But it was only Mertz that people were talking about.
Right.
And then they didn't announce any other. So I just they said that at least 10 guys are out. So the complexion of this game changes radically. If the entire Wisconsin starting offensive line is out, Michigan might have a pretty good shot. If it's like the backup punter and like the left guard,
right,
and a backup tight end and one of the three running backs who's pretty much just as good as the other three running backs, it's going to be a tough ask.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a vector for Michigan to lose to a bunch of fourth stringers in this one, because Wisconsin just kind of re-Wisconsins. So they've been recruiting so well on the offensive line lately. Like, they get 5 stars now, and some of those guys are on the bench. So I have a feeling that, like, if they're down to their third string offensive line,
no matter how well they recruit, is going to be legitimately 8 deep, where there's no drop off.
Right.
Let alone 10 if it's the whole. I mean, that's probably unlikely, but I mean, you look at this game and you go back to last year's game, and 2 things stood out to me. This was probably Michigan's worst pass protection game last year. Mm-hmm. So they were at 69%. They had 22 pass protection minuses, and they didn't even try to run the ball. And last year, Wisconsin, their nose tackle was a true freshman. They spent almost the entire game in their 2-4-5, where they lifted the nose tackle. And Michigan, like at the beginning of the second half, they ran the ball successfully about 2 or 3 times, and then they went away from it the rest of the game. So if that line and that defense couldn't pass protect and couldn't really run the ball, when Wisconsin brings back close to their whole front 7, if I am correct, right?
Pretty much. They lost. Edwards is gone. They're a middle linebacker, but
right.
Yeah.
But they brought back, I think, everybody else. It's just if Michigan again has both tackles out, and we don't expect Hayes to play, we think Mayfield is 50-50 at best, then you're again putting it all on Joe Milton and just asking him to make a bunch of throws on passing downs.
Yeah, the other guy they're missing is Zach Bond, who was their great pass rusher last year, and I don't think the guys that they have this year are great pass rushers. They're using a true freshman at that Schobert spot, right? The strong side but they're going to bring 5 guys every time, and I don't know how any line is going to stand up to that kind of constant attack. And they shoot their linebackers up at run action, and I understand why you don't want to run into that, because they're just going to jam up all your gaps as soon as they can. If they see a puller, they're just jumping into the backfield. And if you have seniors who can turn around and pick off those pullers because they've seen it a million times, then yeah, gash them up. But that's certainly not Michigan's team right now. Their offensive line is really younger because their tackles are gone. So maybe through the air is the way to go. But I think that they got to run their offense. And we get back to the same things we've been talking about with the Minnesota game, since the Minnesota game, that they don't have the talent to keep up with Michigan's fast guys. If you can put Corum out in these linebackers are good because they're recruited to run straight at the line, and they're good at that. What they're not good at is stopping, turning around, and having to be super agile.
So, there's an opportunity there, but it's really hard to see Michigan exploding on offense because, we've seen so many errors. Do I even need to explain this at this point?
No, unless they were saving it all up for this game. Michigan is
saving up the ability to identify who to block.
So, yeah. I don't know, man. I think that Corum could have some good runs in this game, and I think that if we talk about positions where Wisconsin could really be COVIDly hurt. You remember in 2018 they were playing without their 2 defensive ends. Those are still their defensive ends, and those guys are still very good. And if those guys are gone, I don't think that they played their backups very much at all. They have one shared backup, and he was only in there for maybe 9 snaps. So if they're not in a blowout against Illinois, they're still putting those guys on the field. I kind of wonder what they have underneath them, and that's a possibility too. That 2018 really Michigan abused them on the edges because those guys weren't there, and they don't seem to have that kind of depth this year.
No, but Michigan is also now down. Hutchinson, Pay is not going to play according to Brandon Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Mayfield, we just discussed, is probably maybe out, and along with Nico Collins and Ambry Thomas, that's the 5 best players on the team.
Yeah. So you take the way. We're hoping Wisconsin's missing 5. Maybe they'll be missing their 5 best players. Michigan starts
just to even it up.
Yeah. Does that change your opinion of Harbaugh at all? That because they're without so many of their players this year that they expected to have Ambry Thomas
issues
and
that
Nico
you
Collins?
see aren't all the players.
Yeah.
The issues don't just start with the fact that the players aren't very good. It's the fact that they don't know where to be, that they don't know how to stay on side, that they don't know how to fit up a block. And
part of it to me comes back to the players, because I think that if they had Ambry Thomas instead of Vincent Gray, not to bag on that kid again, but if you have the cornerbacks to play the man defense that they want to play, I don't think they're jumping off sides as much. I don't think that they are getting as handsy as they need. I think that there's a lot of desperation that is a reflection of the fact that they just can't play, and they know it.
Yeah, and that's accurate. And then you go to the offense, and the kinds of things that they're calling on offense have nothing to do with their personnel really, and don't seem designed to actually take advantage of the fact that they have a quarterback who can move, and it's 2020, and you're not a very good football team. So what are we doing here?
So let's say that they do.
Why would it change?
So let's pretend for a moment that Michigan does run their offense again. That they bring back some of the things they were doing for Minnesota, and they run their quarterback, and they put their speed in space. I think that Wisconsin's a little light in the secondary. Rashad Wildgoose, he can play. I wouldn't call him a star, but he's he was able to mostly keep up with Amatru Bebe with only a little bit of grabbing. But the other guys, Theon Hicks is a guy that Michigan looked at because he played. He was in the same secondary with Josh Metellus and Devin Gill in high school. He's just a year younger than those guys, and Michigan certainly looked at him and didn't take him. So, and look at their corners
I
that
don't
they
think
got.
Michigan deciding not to take a cornerback is that much of a knock on somebody right now.
I'm saying if he was on Michigan's roster, it would not solve Michigan's problems. And Caesar Williams, the guy they converted from wide receiver last year, he still looks
that's
like
true. But but he's a guy who converted from wide receiver last year, and he's had a full season as a cornerback before this season. So is that at that point he's not really a position switch starter? He's a guy who is a cornerback, and maybe he's not as refined as some other cornerbacks. But this is a team that, unlike Michigan, is metronomically consistent in what they do on both sides of the ball. So the kind of mistakes that we're seeing from Michigan on both offense and defense will not occur for Wisconsin. And what is Michigan going to do to overcome the fact that their error rate is going to be considerably greater than Wisconsin? If they can have Johnny Thompson return an interception for a touchdown, that would help. But I just if Joe Milton has a takeoff game where he's just lights out, that's how Michigan wins this game to me. And I'm not saying that's impossible, but it feels early for that.
Yeah, I mean, the things that really scare me is that, we've been facing two terrible offensive lines the last 2 weeks. And now you take away Quiddy, you take away Aiden, and you upgrade from an Indiana-Michigan State line to one of the best lines in the country, provided that they're healthy.
If they're, I mean, we're looking at the second team defensive ends, and even if the second team Wisconsin offensive line is playing, that's advantage Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I think even though they didn't really run the ball very well against Illinois, I think that I'm preparing that Michigan is going to get paved, not quite as badly as last year, just because there's no Jonathan Taylor to really maximize all their blocking. But I don't expect that to go well. I expect Michigan to start cheating the run, and I expect Mertz to have some open receivers to choose from.
And depending on how big the lanes are, their running backs turned up a lot of there were a couple touchdowns on the field that their running backs ran into a blocker instead. And that maybe they have vision problems, but my guess is that might have been a one-off for a first game, and that those lanes were there against Illinois. That's not really a saving grace. I mean, John Michael Lyles, you can just run behind that guy all game.
So I think we're both projecting a loss here.
Oh yeah. I'm projecting a loss, even expecting 23 or 25 Wisconsin players to be out. I expect Michigan to lose, even if we get Van Den Boom.
All right. Well, that's even if we get Van Den Boom.
Yes.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know. The other thing about Wisconsin is they have 4 scholarship quarterbacks. Michigan was down to its 4th quarterback. That would be our backup walk-on.
Yeah. I don't even know if our backup walk-on is 4th string right now. He's probably 3rd string. Because who's our number 3 guy? Right? It's the true freshman.
I don't think it's Valari right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought him to Indiana with one of the walk-ons. So maybe it is. Maybe it would just be a regular.